So welcome to the education panel, guys. Apologies for my accent. I am 50% Australian. Forgive me. But give yourselves a pat on the back if you're here today, because I think, as many people have said, you're spending your Saturday learning about money, which I think we can all agree is fairly important, even though we're told it's not, and it won't buy you happiness. But just by show of hands, nice and high, if you attended school, college, university, raise a hand. Nice and high, nice and high. Leave your hand high, nice and high, if you feel that really gave you a good grasp of money, how it works, financial. Great, okay. We found our people. We found our people. Okay, so I just wanted to touch on that because the further I've gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole properly, the more I've kind of realized just how many areas of life and society it touches. And the further you get down, the further you realize the more Bitcoin fixes it. And for me, where I've realized broken money, if you follow the money, it all starts with education when we're yay high and pretty small. And we go through life on this path that's kind of preordained. And I don't know about anyone else here, but I was about 30, I've just turned 40, when I started to question, what am I actually interested in? What am I good at? What makes me happy? And I was sitting in a cubicle with halogen lights, and I'm sure it's a familiar story to a lot of people. So you start to realize that we're choosing jobs and careers and how we earn our money, not based on our creativity, our passions, what we're good at, but just based on what is going to pay the bills, and those bills are exponentially just getting higher and higher. So happiness is a big topic for me, freedom and happiness. It's what my podcast is all about. And I just wanted to touch on that because I think it really starts to join the dots with just how giantly screwed up, for want of a better word, our system is when it comes to education and that start we get in life and where we end up, because it's not in a happy place. And Gallup have a poll that has, given a statistic that 80% of people are either disengaged or actively disengaged in their jobs, with mantras around just living for the weekend, living paycheck to paycheck. And so we got on a call quickly before this event and decided that there's a big difference between academia and useful education. And all of these guys here have kind of got one foot in each of those systems. So we're just going to have a chat about, the struggles they face getting their new education across the line with the regulators and the official systems. So let's start with Djuro. Dr. Djuro, who is extremely humble, because if anyone was really rooted in the academic system, they would insist you call them doctor, whereas Djuro was very happy just to be called Djuro. So Djuro, tell us where you're from and your journey into Bitcoin.
Thank you very much. So at the moment, I am working as an academic director at Kaplan Business School. But what's more interesting in this role that I've experienced for the past 2 years is I had to first evaluate and look at the existing information technology courses. And this also included me evaluating Bitcoin. Now, what I found from my analysis is that in the current higher education, there is no Bitcoin subjects taught at higher education or university sector. What you'll see is often blockchain or some sort of tokenomics, which does not align to what's been kind of discussed here. And what we have proposed at Kaplan Business School is that for our 6 IT courses, to introduce a Bitcoin-only subject that is a core subject for our cybersecurity specialization, and also an elective for any student that wants to undertake it. And to my knowledge, this is the first of its kind in Australia, but it was a mammoth task because from a regulation point of view, it did take, let's say, over 2 years to achieve this.
And what kind of, I know you've told us 2 years. Yeah. And what did you find was one of the biggest objections on that 2-year journey? Like, what were the objections from people that obviously have a slightly... I'm not a conspiracy theorist, guys, but the further you go down this rabbit hole, the more you find yourself becoming one. What did you find was one of the biggest objections getting to that point?
Well, what I found is that the popularization of blockchain was a terminology that they wanted to have. At the same time, they wanted to have Bitcoin properties, but never mentioned the B word, as if it's like Lord Voldemort.
Different.
To me, that is not how it should be, because when we are teaching something, we should teach that something that's current, and that's for future relevance. And my approach is Bitcoin is not only just current, but it is also for the future 10, 20 years. I see this as being an important technology for generations to come.
Yep. So first educational lesson, Bitcoin, not blockchain. Daz, tell us your background and what's brought you to Bitcoin and why you think it's important.
Thanks very much, guys, and well done for being here. It's an absolute pleasure. So, yeah, Daz B. I'm an electrician by trade, so I spend my days with hand-on tools, and I'm formally educated with a background in electrical engineering. So I've been through that system. I know what that's like, and as you dive down this rabbit hole, more and more you start to discover how little we know about the incentives behind the education system, the monetary system, the financial system. Everything's layered in layers of obscurity. And, you know, you could argue whether that's intended or not, but the reality is that it is that way. And it's really, really hard for wage earners to understand the financial system, the monetary system, and the extractive nature that is created through the way that system works. And so what I discovered was, once peeling off these layers with trying to get ahead, trying to beat inflation, trying to feed my family, and trying to build a life and a future to be able to create an environment to pass down generational wealth for my family, the more I learned, the more I discovered that the system is engineered in a way that's working against me as a wage earner. So it was really... The more conversation I was having with people at work, the more evident it became that it was just really misunderstood and really hard to understand. So I took the action to start trying to distill down some of these complex tasks into easy to understand language, targeted at wage earners, targeted at my peers in the workplace, and discovered that it was actually resonating quite well. So we formulated with the likes of some prominent Bitcoiners like Greg Foss. Everyone knows and loves Uncle Greg. He's as mad as he is in real life as what you see on the stage. We formulated an educational platform with that in mind, trying to break down some of these complex financial, the complexities around that, and just try and distill that down for everyday people to understand. So everything's free and accessible through our platform, and we started with a course that was really just trying to paint a picture for Bitcoin. As far as an option for everyone's investable future. So we look at the history of money, we look at the incentive structures that are built around the way that the monetary system works, in particular fiat currency, and just trying to highlight what are your investable options moving forward as a wage earner. How can you protect yourself against what is working against you? So we do a brief introduction on equities, bonds, gold, and then we finally frame up Bitcoin as an optional investable option for Bitcoin and why it matters. Yeah.
I think hearing from someone like you as a family man and what you call yourself a blue-collar worker, a wage earner, which, you know, most of us are, I wrote down here a quote that Rockefeller, which some of you may have heard of, it was 120 years ago, and, you know, the world order until now, perhaps, has been follow America. And Rockefeller founded the General Education, let's call it the General Academic Board, 120 years ago in 1903. And he said, I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers, which that has a very specific agenda. And how's that going 120 years later? Which, Kieran, if you want to introduce yourself, you're a teacher, and how's that going for you? And why did you find Bitcoin? How did you find Bitcoin? What does it mean to you?
got enough time.
Loads of time.
Started the world's first Bitcoin school back in 2014 in a school in Dandenong, so a government school as well. And reached out to 2 universities that I later found out were sort of backed by Andreas Antonopoulos to do BTC donations to my school to buy Raspberry Pis, which most people here would know are like mini computers. About $30 each at the time, just to demonstrate that from the other side of the world, they could buy computers for school kids in Australia and set them up. So anyway, that was awesome. Super excited, principal excited, but the bursar, or the accountant for our school, bit of a dragon lady, she kind of cracked the shits and was like, I don't understand this thing, like we can't use it. Contacted the Department of Ed and was like, nah, this is not on, you can't spend it, rah, rah, rah. So I was like, really? We can't buy computers for school kids because you don't know what money is? Like, this is crazy. So to my principal's credit, he kept asking the department, can we use this? Like, how do we do it, sort of thing, as the price is going up. So $30 kind of turned into $250 and then kept going up and up. And then eventually they said, it was such strange language, eventually they said, yes, you can spend up to $250 in Bitcoin for risk of it going up in value. And I was like, what? I can't even wrap my head around that. That's madness. So around that time, we were like, okay, cool. Well, I guess we get some Raspberry Pis and away we go. We can set up a learning programs with that. Around that time, I was volunteering at the Melbourne Bitcoin Technology Centre. Has anyone, I know Chris, one of the organisers, worked there with me. Anyone else been there back in the day? The old Bitcoin Centre in Melbourne? Show of hands. Yay, one person. Shit, that's great. 2 people. It was like the spot. It was the bomb. Like, it was really sad when it sort of changed into the blockchain center and then sort of died, but it was awesome at the time. Anyway, this guy came from the States, visited the Bitcoin center, and unbeknownst to me, he'd been to like 250 schools across America, donating little bits here and there in Bitcoin or whatever he could. And someone said, go check out Kieran's school. I think you'll really like it. So he did, spent the whole day, stayed after school, and said, dude, this is the best school I've ever seen. I want to give you 21 Bitcoin to build that learning space you were talking about. So he did. Do you think the bursar liked that? No. She hated that. So we went to the department and said, look, we want to build this learning space out of shipping containers or blocks in a blockchain sort of thing. And we got 21 Bitcoin to do that. They like balked at it. I even joined school council to get it across the line. And it was just ignorance from every direction. It was crazy. So we flipped it in the end, and he set up a foundation. So we set up a foundation to buy stuff in Bitcoin and let the kids vote on how all the funds were allocated for the space. So it worked out really well in the end. But yeah, the bloody department, just a nightmare to deal with.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, especially since the pandemic, I think people really are more willing. I don't think we'd have got this many people at an event like this, even in a city as big as Sydney, a couple of years ago. But I think the pandemic has really got people questioning why power structures are objecting or resistant to certain things. And I know there's been a talk on CBDCs, which is the one that scares me the most. But we do have this other, Jeff Booth calls it the parallel system. And one of the fundamentals of Bitcoin, which again has been touched on, is proof of work. And I think when you look at the world through that lens, your whole value system just starts to sort of come back to life. That up to a certain point, for me anyway, what are my values is not a question I would have even asked. So wherever you are down the rabbit hole, just keep these little snippets of, subtext that we get with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, not crypto. Bitcoin, not blockchain. Proof of work versus proof of stake. You start to see everything else in the world through that lens. So Kieran, maybe to start with you on this one. When you think about the children, because you're, a teacher of smaller children, of younger children who have all this creativity, all this passion, all this energy, and those power structures that you were reporting to are essentially suppressing an opportunity to learn about something that instills those values. Like, how did that leave you feeling?
Pretty damn frustrated, I gotta say. But I suppose it's an eye-opener, right? So you sort of look at these systems, and as much as I kind of hate the word blockchain, and like we said, like the Bitcoin Center turning into the blockchain, more recently, I've started just using it, just hijacking that word because you say the like Bitcoin word and people kind of normies like freak out. So I'm just like, yeah, it's blockchain tech, and then just teach them about Bitcoin anyway, sort of thing. So I think like with these power structures, we kind of have to be like water, just go around them, and you know, I suppose it's like the psychological stuff, like just get ahead of them in terms of language and that sort of thing to sort of get it across the line. But no, frustrating as hell, I have to say.
And I think we're at a point now, hopefully everybody understands that if you don't keep learning, you'll get it. The pennies drop, the light bulbs go on. I'm learning every day, but Bitcoin is past the point where it can be stopped, where it can be shut down, which, back to you, Djuro, like, why is it so important to you that the Bitcoin fundamentals are being taught from a lens of freedom, from a lens of choice of education? How could you speak into that?
Right. It's important to understand the fundamentals, especially when the fundamentals are cemented, particularly when it comes to base layer 1. And what we're going to see is once base layer 2 even further improves, it functions neatly, but there are still improvements to be made. Yeah. I still see a lot of improvements on top of Lightning Network in terms of seeing decentralized protocols, decentralized applications, and it will mirror what we have with the TCP/IP that we use for the internet today. But to answer your question, it is important to teach these fundamentals because often we have these valid questions to ask. We want, as human beings, to improve something. We feel like this can be improved if we try it this way. But if you don't understand that aspect, you can't really understand that it can't be improved. It is how it is. There are engineering trade-offs to be made for certain aspects. For example, base layer 1, we focus on security, not how scalable or how quick it is. This is often confused in the other blockchains where they bloat everything in one layer. They expect everything to do in that one layer without thinking of any trade-offs to begin with.
Shortcuts.
Obviously, with layer 2, we have the scalability, and what I see as well, no official names, but on top of these layers, layer 3 and so forth, we will see more a shift from centralization to decentralization, both in protocols and applications.
Yeah, and I think it's just taking what we already know as the internet. We know you can learn, medical heart surgery aside, you can learn pretty much anything on the internet now. Like, people are choosing to learn from creators, from online education. Again, since the pandemic, there's a bigger shift to homeschooling. I think parents are split on that. It's either their worst nightmare or their dream. Daz, you can probably speak into that. I asked you earlier, are your kids homeschooled? And you said no, but I would love them to be. So from your perspective, what are the benefits of something like having or what are the benefits for you as a dad, for example? And I think all of us, you start to look at Bitcoin as something that we may not live to see the full fruits of its benefits to society, but we can certainly benefit in some way from being a part of it now. Like, as a dad with kids who are at an age where they're probably full of enthusiasm for some things, and the lights are maybe going to go off in future years when they hit their teens or whatever. Like, what do you see this parallel system looking like for education of the kids, as Foss would say, for the kids? What do you see that? How do you see that playing out?
Ultimately, education, the cost of education is going to zero. And I think all you have to do is look at the incentive structures behind the institutions and the curriculum that gets set for the kids. And as a parent, I'm pretty passionate about allowing and giving my kids the opportunity to explore what it is that they resonate with as far as learning. Now, there is a balance between giving them a broader enough sense to be able to pursue any of those avenues they choose to go down. But I think that the school-based system, like as a parent, I'm not involved in that curriculum. I have no idea what they're getting taught and how they're getting taught, and it's a tragedy. And I think we as Bitcoiners celebrate a little too much the top-down approach with a lot of these institutions, governments, politics, and so forth about the Bitcoin adoption. And I think, like you pointed out earlier, this thing can't be stopped now. And it's about providing the resources. Like you guys here you're here because you're an active learner in your own development. Like, congratulations to you, because we're a rare breed. Everyone in this room is a rare breed. It really, really is, and it's becoming more and more evident. Yeah, well done. It's becoming more and more evident as time goes on that, like, this groundswell is unstoppable, but it's going to take each and every one of you guys in the room to get actively involved in voicing that opinion. You want this education in the schools. You want this education from a ground-up approach. And for us at Looking Glass, we are focused on providing those resources to motivated individuals who want to go and start a meetup. Like, I encourage you, start it. Have those conversations. Educate your small businesses around town, because if we integrate this from a circular economy, it's a thing that can't be fucking stopped. It honestly will not be stopped. And same with teachers. So if you are a teacher, you're very much controlled in the curriculum, but you do have a little bit of freedom around the activities and the things that you can do within that classroom. So again, we have resources on Looking Glass. They're free to download. Teachers packs, teachers materials, go and download them. Have some fun with it and try and integrate it into that system as much as you can. And I encourage everyone to take that next step to get involved locally and be the voice, be the change.
Yeah, and just to point out as well, the stuff on Looking Glass, is it lookingglasseducation.com?
Correct.
Yes. I went and had a look at their stuff because I'm guilty of thinking, I need to create something because people are always asking me questions. The one thing I love about Bitcoin, which I think we had a conversation, he said it, there's no such thing as IP. Like, there's a lot of creators on the internet that get into fisticuffs about, you nicked my idea. Like, at the end of the day, the more of us that are out there just educating our own networks, the quicker this thing gets adopted to a point that these power structures we're talking about have less and less control. We can all be happier. Deflation becomes a real thing, not inflation, which gives us so many choices. And I've completely lost my train of thought, getting a bit passionate. Don't feel that you can't take what any of these guys have created. Probably not Djuro's stuff because it's official and he spent 2 years doing the legwork. But if you want to go and take the 12-week Bitcoin officially recognized course, you've got Djuro. Go to Looking Glass if you want to get either something to educate yourself or a kit that you can implement in a school. Take it, tweak it. No one here cares if you want to recreate it and change some bits and make it as your own if you're feeling creative. So don't ever let that get in the way, because I know in the world we're in now, especially internet creators, they feel like, oh no, that's someone else's. I don't know what to create of my own. So do you want to add to that, Kieran?
Yeah, for sure. So for the last year with Gordon, shout out to Gordon over there, we've got about 15 to 30 people now in the faculty that we sort of meet up once a week, and we're building an open source curriculum for Bitcoin as well. So if you go to theschoolofbitcoin.com, you can see all that. It's all free. Anyone can use whatever they want. And I think that's the way to go. So, like, I've started at a new school as well, and they haven't got an LMS, like a learning management system. So I was like, oh, awesome. No legacy crap to deal with. Let's roll out GitHub. So we're using GitHub as an LMS, and I encourage, like, every school and every institution to do the same, because it means, like you said, you can take someone's work, fork it, build on that, and, yeah, ownership kind of becomes meaningless. I think it's, particularly for learning materials, it should be open and it should be free to connect with other people and collaborate. So, yeah, theschoolofbitcoin.com, check it out.
And if I can just dovetail off the end of that, another really, really valuable resource that we have on Looking Glass Education. Where's Carrie? Carrie Crawford. Stand up, take a bow. Carrie has over... I encourage you, go and seek her out and have a chat. So Carrie has over 30 years experience in teaching people how to present. So if you're one of these people who's interested in creating a meetup, but you don't know how to frame up what it is you want to convey and those messages, she has kindly donated her time for Looking Glass Education. She has a 4-part video series on there teaching you how to get your idea across, how to create concepts, build a presentation around it, and this is top shelf, costs thousands of dollars normally in the business environment, and it's all free and open source thanks to her time and Looking Glass. And I encourage everyone to go and check it out in the least. Like, even if you don't go down that route, you will learn something from that course. It's phenomenal. So thank you, Carrie.
Cool. Yeah, just wrapping up, we've covered a lot. So we're fine. Look, we've still got 3 minutes. It's great. All of us are paranoid about going over time. So just to wrap up, guys, I think all our social handles are out there. The guys have organised this so well. I'll shout out to the team that have put this together in less than 6 months'
legit.
notice, by the way.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
I've been to one other Bitcoin conference, which was over in LA in November last year, and it was enormous. And I think the Miami Bitcoin conference is 30,000 people. I can't wait to see this grow and be able to say we're at the first one. So it's going to be very cool to see this expand for Australia, represent. So yeah, from my perspective, Bitcoin, as Michael Saylor would say, is hope. It's happiness, it's freedom, it's choice. It's all the things that I just think, if you've been paying attention for the last couple of years and you've quietly been thinking, I'm not quite sure that makes sense anymore, but it's already torn your family apart. Like there's a lens through which to now start talking to people about pretty much anything in society that's going wrong. And when you peel back the layers and follow the money, it's money. Even this gender debate that's going on at the moment, there's big pharma cashing in on hormones that can stop kids having puberty when they're supposed to. Like, it just feeds into everything. So if there's anything any of you want to add on just to wrap up, tell people where to find you.
Yeah, one last thing.
Absolutely.
So with that open source model, so I had a family reach out to me recently from Egypt, which is crazy. So this family emailing me to see if I could do tutoring for their kids. I was like, whoa, that's insane. The time difference is like bananas, right? So it's really hard to do stuff sort of one-on-one. So I started creating open source content with the School Bitcoin project, but we're doing a value for value model. So basically putting up the content, they were like, how much is it going to cost? I'm like, whatever you want to pay. So I'm getting them to sort of learn about Lightning, and the parents as well, to sort of pay for whatever they think the content's worth. And I think we can kind of do that across the board for education. So like free doesn't necessarily mean you don't get paid. It just means it's free, as in you can utilize it for what you want.
Djuro, you mentioned something to me earlier as well, talking kids and what they're interested in. I mean, there's going to be kids making six-figure salaries at 12, the way it's going, with the opportunities that are coming into this space and the apps that are being built. Djuro, you mentioned a gaming app. Tell the parents in the crowd what they can get their kids onto and be paid in Bitcoin.
Yes, so my approach when it comes to onboarding new users, we need to think outside of the box. Take, for instance, ChatGPT. Their approach was simplified. And my approach would be to have a game environment where it's unfortunately very addictive to some kids, but this gaming environment, when you are, let's say, playing these games, you're learning about economies. And what's more interesting is now in these games, you can actually incorporate Satoshis in gameplay. Mm-hmm. So it also incentivizes some kids to learn about this when they see, hey, this has value. The first question they might ask, how do I cash out this? How do I get value for this so that I can purchase? Or how do I purchase something using this? So it makes them ask those questions as opposed being bombarded with, create this wallet now, create this. So it creates a new paradigm as to how to approach onboarding new users.
Speak to them in a way they understand, I think, is what we're getting at. Cool, our time is up, guys. Please come and find us if you've got any questions. We all love talking Bitcoin, so enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. Thanks.